how likely is it that the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers wind up in the same spot they were last year? How likely is it? I think it's moderately likely, but I do think there's recipes to beat these teams. This episode, we're going to go through the record predictions for the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. If you're new, you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, like the video if you haven't already. This is the 3-point lead. This is the Loeb's Leads podcast. We're going to break this down game by game, but we're also going to break down the weaknesses of these teams because I think that's something that gets overlooked when you talk about contenders is the recipe to beat them. And I look back at the 2023 season for really both of these teams. There's a pretty clear recipe to beat both of them. It's different. Each one is different, but there's a pretty clear recipe. And we're going to start with the San Francisco 49ers because I look back at this Niners season, and obviously they were honestly moments away from winning the Super Bowl, right? That third down where Trent McDuffie came on the blitz in the Super Bowl, where if they had converted, they run out the clock, kick like a 40-something yard field goal, and they win. They're Super Bowl champs and not the Kansas City Chiefs. Very different offseason, very different discussions that happened throughout the offseason. But you look at what the 49ers struggled with last year, it was a combination of a couple things. Number one, and I saw this as the year went on, I talked about this towards probably the months of December and January with the Niners. There was this, what's the word I'm looking for? Stigma is a negative word, so not stigma, but there was like this expectation with the 49ers run defense that they were elite. They were elite on all three levels. Obviously, they had Nick Bosa. They were elite. Like they were going to suffocate you defensively, whatever they did. And that was the farthest thing from the truth. The last 2 months of the year, teams ran the ball all over them, and it showed as time went on. Like you look at the end of last season, I'll walk you through their schedule really, really quickly. But you look at the end of last season with the San Francisco 49ers, even if they didn't lose, they struggled against a certain type of team. And, you know, it's really difficult to say that the Niners were struggling overall last year because they made the Super Bowl. But like you look at the end of their season, the end of what the Niners were doing, they lose to Baltimore, right? They lose to Baltimore where Baltimore completely dominates the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They're able to run the ball. Honestly, defensively, and this is the second thing the Niners struggled with, they had second-level players that would completely fly around, completely change the game, make life really difficult for Christian McCaffrey. And you look at the Niners game in the NFC Championship, the Lions game in the NFC Championship, like that was another game where you had team who dominated the line of scrimmage, especially offensively. You look at their second-level players and their run defense as a whole, really good, made life really difficult for Christian McCaffrey, and they almost lost that game. They struggled against the Packers in the divisional round. Now, the Packers is a little different because they didn't have Deebo Samuel. It was a big part of their offense, but very similar, right? You run the ball with Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones was coming into that game red hot. The bottom line here is the Niners, the recipe to beat the Niners, I'm not going to say they struggle because they're a really good team, but the recipe to beat the Niners is, number one, controlling the line of scrimmage on the offensive side of the ball, being able to run the football, whether that's a dynamic running back, a line that's going to push, or both. And number two, having second-level players that fly around. So when you look at the Niners schedule for 2024, and we talked about this in the Jets videos, you can see the Sam Darnold jersey next to me. I think the Jets can beat them week one. I think they do. Like, this is a team that will fly around on the second level defensively. You got linebackers who can make plays left and right, really good defensive line too. Make life really difficult, keep them behind the chains as much as possible, and make Brock Purdy turn into a pocket passer. And I'm not hating on Brock Purdy. I am a Brock Purdy fan. I understand how good he is. I think the whole system quarterback thing is kind of out the window. I think we're kind of on the same page there. But that's the lesser of two evils in that offense for sure. Would you rather lose to Brock Purdy being a pocket passer or Christian McCaffrey toting the football 25 times a game? Make life difficult for your starts. The old Bill Belichick mantra. I think the Jets can do it, and I think the Jets will have success offensively as well because I think Breece Hall is that good. I think moving Elijah Vera Tucker inside for the New York Jets, allowing their tackles to work on the outside, the new ones that they got, is going to be really good. So I think looking at the Niners, they lose week one, but guys, I'm looking at the rest of this Niners schedule. They are going to wind up, in my opinion, and I think it's tough because there are games they can lose in the middle of this schedule here, but like week 2 at Minnesota, I think especially after a loss, they bounce back and beat Minnesota. I think the Rams can beat them, especially at home in week 3. I don't think they do. I think they beat the Patriots. I think they beat the Cardinals. Both of those games are at home. So they're 4-1 now. Traveling to Seattle on a Thursday night We saw how that worked last year. The Niners killed them. I think the Niners win that game. 5-1 going in off of a mini bye against Kansas City Chiefs. The issue is here, the Chiefs have a full bye. Even if it's in San Francisco, I'm still going to rock with the Chiefs. I think the way these two teams match up, like you saw in the Super Bowl, Kansas City could run the ball. They played exceptional run defense against the Niners, and I think they're only going to get better with the pieces they brought back in the run defense. So I think Kansas City wins that game. But next week, San Francisco beats Dallas. They're going to be what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-2 going into their week 9 bye. Like, makes sense. It's a really good team. Now, I will say, looking at the rest of their schedule, it's tougher to find teams that fit the bill of how you can beat them. I think it's tough to do. I don't know. I think when you look at the Bucs game in week 10 off of a bye like that, to me, that's a game where I think the Bucs could show up, give them trouble, but I'm going to trust the Niners off of a bye. The next week against Seattle, I'm going to trust the Niners at home against the Seahawks, superior team. Here's where it gets really difficult because I think I don't know, I think you look at what Green Bay can do offensively now. I think they got a little bit worse along the offensive line, but Josh Jacobs coming in, upgrade over Aaron Jones. Not much, but an upgrade. Defensively, they got much better. I think Green Bay will beat San Francisco in week 12. I think that's a win for Green Bay. Week 13, I do think they bounce back and beat the Bills. But that's a game, again, where I look at Green Bay as a team that'll be able to run the ball. They'll be able to control the clock. They will be able to fly around defensively, especially now they had Xavier McKinney. Like, he can play in the box. He can play up top. It's going to be really difficult to figure that out for the Niners defensively. To me, that just makes a lot of sense. I think that's a spot for Green Bay to win at home. Week 13, like I said, I think the Niners beat the Bills. And then 14-15 back-to-back wins. I think they beat the Bears. Bears really interesting, though, because that was really the only game I looked at on the schedule. And I was like, yes, obviously the Bears can play good defense, but that's a pass attack that I think week 14, as Caleb Williams is continuing to get his feet under him, assuming all those receivers are healthy, that could cause a lot of trouble because they're so deep, which is why week 16, we'll talk about that. I think there's another team that can beat the Niners, but I think they beat Chicago at home. I think they beat LA at home on a short week. Now, here's where it's really tough because week 16, if you guys watch the Dolphins or the AFC East videos and the Dolphins video, I picked the Dolphins to beat the Niners here. I think the Dolphins beat the Niners, even with the Niners coming off of a mini bye, because one, like I said, that's a run game that's going to be really difficult to stop. They will crush you with speed. They will blow by you. But the depth in the Niners secondary is a small worry for me. Like, I look at a lot of the teams they're going to play. Sure, there are some really good receivers. Part of the reason I think they'll lose to the Chiefs is the same thought process. They are deep at receiver. I don't know how deep the Niners are at DB. I'm not convinced they're super deep at DB. So when you look at a team like Miami who will go 3-4 deep with guys like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, then Odell, Braxton Berrios, like they're deep, and I think they're better than the depth that the Niners have on a different level. Now, the Dolphins defense, I worry about that. Absolutely. I think it's going to be a really high scoring game, but that's a team where I don't know. Like, I look at Miami, I look at what they can do offensively. They can take the top off. They can do a lot of really good things. Next week, hosting Detroit. I think Detroit's the better team here. I think Detroit takes this one from San Francisco. Again, that's a team where I watched the NFC Championship back. I'm like, I don't know how Detroit didn't win this game. They were the better team. I still think that's the case. Week 18 on the road against Arizona, I think they take care of business there. So that leaves them at 12-5 right now. Looking at conference rank, they are second in the NFC, and I'm going to scroll over to the tiebreakers here. Looking at the tiebreakers over Philly, because if you guys didn't watch that video, we have Philly going 12-5 as well. Looking at the tiebreakers, San Francisco would be above the Eagles based on division record. San Francisco have 6-0 in the division, which is really hard to do, but they could do it. But I think they finish 12-5. They lose games to teams that'll be able to run the ball or challenge their depth defensively in the secondary. I think that's the commonality. I think that's the way it rolls with the San Francisco 49ers. We can move to the Kansas City Chiefs, but very shortly before we do, I want to give a brief shout out to our sponsor, Better Picks. You guys know it is almost August. The NFL season literally starts in 2 days. I will be at that game. Going to be unbelievable. But if you want to make your season-long predictions, there is no better place to do it than Better Picks. You can join with code LEADS. You can click the link in the description, go to any of my socials, and join with code LEADS, LEADS. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. This is the best way to participate in fantasy sports, to watch your players predict more or less on their yards, touchdowns, whatever it may be. This is the best way to do it. Makes it really easy for you. And again, if you join with that code, they'll match your first deposit. So they're giving you some type of free value if you join with that code. Don't miss out while you still have the opportunity to. And like I said, once these videos hit August, we'll be talking about our predictions for these specific numbers. So when we talk about, let's say, the NFC North in a week or two, you look at Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll talk about Jahmyr Gibbs' prediction for his rushing yards. You look at Jahmyr Gibbs and say, oh, he's projected, let's say, 982 rushing yards for the 2024 season. I think I know where I stand on that. But stuff like that, we will predict that. We will go through that. And again, join with code LEADS on Better, BETR, BETR. Join with code LEADS, LEADS on Better. Links in the description, links in my socials. Don't miss out. But let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and the recipe to beat them, because I also look back at the Chiefs, their 2023 schedule, and it's kind of cliche because like this stuff happens in the NFL and you think, okay, yeah, and it made sense they lose that game. But if the Chiefs turn the football over, or at least turn it over more than the other team, they're not going to win the game. Like the recipe to beat the Chiefs is legitimately not beat yourself. Kind of how the old Patriots were. You beat the Patriots by, you essentially have to play a perfect game. That was the phrase I always used. That was the phrase I grew up hearing. You got to play a perfect game. But it's not even playing a perfect game. It's just not turning the ball over and being opportunistic on the other side to make plays. So like I look at the Chiefs teams, the teams that the Chiefs will play, and I think they're like week 1 against Baltimore, I think the Chiefs win that game. Baltimore defensively can do a lot of really good things. I just trust the Chiefs coming off an offseason. I think the Chiefs are going to come out with some crazy stuff in week 1 too. Like I trust them to beat them. I also do think they had Lamar's number. I think secondary wise, it's going to be different with Derrick Henry, but I think the Chiefs run defense is good enough to contain them. Cincy's the really tough one for me because normally like neutral site, I'd probably pick. If Cincy was at home, I'd probably pick Cincy. Both coming off of a Sunday game, probably would pick Cincy. But it's at Arrowhead, and the Chiefs have 3 extra days. So I think the Chiefs win this one. But after that, we get into week 3, and it's the first team that's going to take care of the football, probably put up some points. And honestly, I look back at like the Raiders game. I look back at the, Denver game. I look back at the Buffalo game. Keeping Mahomes on the sidelines, it's the old adage, keep the other best quarterback on the sidelines. It works. And I look at Atlanta, a team that's going to be able to run the ball really, really well, chew clock, keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. And offensively, like Kirk Cousins, not going to turn the ball over much. Defensively, you got DBs that can make plays, get some picks. I worry about the pass rush, the D-line for sure. But like this is the Chiefs offense now that's going to pass better than they're going to run, I think. So I look at Atlanta, a team that's going to take care of the football, a team that's going to make it really hard for Patrick Mahomes to get into a rhythm, especially if they're moving the ball down the field. I think Atlanta wins this game. I think this is an Atlanta win. Week 3, they're also at home. This is the Chiefs' first away game of the year. I think this screams Atlanta, but 4-5, weeks 4 and 5. On the road against the Chargers, the Chiefs win that. At home against the Saints, that's a Monday night game. I don't know why. I don't know. The Chiefs are going to win that. Then they get their week 6 bye, like we just talked about the Niners. They beat the Niners. We talked about that. Now, it gets into a point with the schedule now where the Chiefs start to play some inferior teams, and then back half of the year just load it up against really good teams. So week 8 on the road against the Raiders, I really want to pick the Raiders to beat them once this year, but I don't think they can do it defensively. Like I think the Chiefs will have their way through the air still. And like I said, this Chiefs offense has really upgraded at receiver with Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy. Like I think this Chiefs offense is going to be able to pass a lot better than they did last year. I don't think the Raiders can handle that. Look, that's a team, though. You have the blueprint from last year. You force turnovers. You keep everything in front of you. I think Aiden O'Connell threw like 7 passes in that game. Like you legitimately don't pass. You run and keep the football on the ground against Chiefs. The Raiders did that. I think they could do it, but I don't think they're going to beat them now. I mean, week 9, Monday night against Tampa, the Chiefs aren't losing that game. Week 10 at home against Denver, the Chiefs aren't losing that game. But here's where it gets into the tougher schedule. Outside of week 12 against Carolina, I'm just going to spoil it. The Chiefs are going to win that game. But Week 11 at Buffalo, I think this is a Buffalo Bills game that they win. I think the Bills will be able to run the ball. I think when you look at Joe Brady and what he does offensively, it goes against what the Chiefs try to do defensively really well. They're going to throw so many different looks at you, but the Bills are going to kind of stick to their guns. They're going to run the ball. And obviously, when you have a dual threat quarterback like Josh Allen, it's going to be really difficult to beat. And if Josh Allen takes care of the football this game, they're going to win. They are absolutely going to win. Like I said, week 12, you beat the Panthers. Week 13, 14, beat the Raiders at home, beat the Chargers at home. And then you get into this little gauntlet at the end of the year. So right now we have the Chiefs at what? 1, 2, 3. Be 11-2. Is that what it is? 11-2 with losses to Buffalo and Atlanta. 11-2 with losses to Buffalo and Atlanta. Traveling to Cleveland in the winter, I think the Browns win this game. I think this is also a game where the Browns, I think they'll do a decent job of taking care of the football this year, but defensively will win the turnover battle because they're so opportunistic, can do so many things. I think they're going to run through the Chiefs' offensive line. I think there's too much, and especially as the Chiefs come in like red hot, beating teams they should beat, I think the Browns kind of cut them back down to size. They take care of the football. They got players at the second level who will fly around as well. Like, I think this is a game where the Cleveland Browns come out, cut the head off the snake in the run game, make life really difficult for Patrick Mahomes, and then just take care of the football, be smart offensively. I think it's going to be a very interesting game for Deshaun Watson to see what he can do against Steve Spagnuolo's defense, but I think he'll do okay. Week 16 at home against the Houston Texans. Now, this is really tough, too, because, I really, really want to believe that so tough. I really want to believe that the Chiefs will bounce back off of a loss that shouldn't lose. I think the Browns are going to be a wild card team. Don't want to spoil, but you shouldn't lose. I really want to believe they're going to bounce back. But Houston's good. Houston is really, really, really good. And I think, when you look at, I don't know, this is really tough. This is really tough because I look at the rest of the schedule and if the Texans win this game, I will have the Chiefs losing 3 straight games. When has that happened? When has that happened? I don't think it ever has. With that being said, though, it's a difficult conference. It's a difficult conference, and you're banking on a lot of health as well out of this Chiefs team that's a little bit older, especially defensively. I think the Houston Texans win this game. I think offensively they will have their way through the secondary, and I think we also have to look at this Chiefs secondary without L'Jarius Sneed now and understand, even though Steve Spagnuolo can do unbelievable things, it's not the same. It's not the same secondary as it once was. I think the Texans will be able to pass the ball. They'll keep CJ Stroud upright. I trust the Texans to put up a lot of points against the Chiefs. Can their defense cut the head off the snake? Maybe, but I think they can play really clean football. I think they can take care of the ball, maybe opportunistic football and take 1 or 2 away from Mahomes as well. But this is a team I think the Texans are as good as the Chiefs on paper. And then week 17, I know it's going to sound crazy. I think they go into Pittsburgh and lose. I think Pittsburgh beats the Chiefs at home. That is a defense that is going to be, I believe that's a Christmas game too. Christmas game? Maybe New Year's game, around there. That is a team that's going to take the football away. And now you have Russell Wilson, who, by the way, beat the Chiefs last year. He's not going to turn the football over much. He's going to be really, really, what's the word I'm looking for? Smart, but he's going to know what to do with the football. And I think against a Steve Spagnuolo defense, which he's seen plenty of times, he is going to confidently lead that team in. They'll be able to run the ball pretty well as well. I think the Steelers take the ball away a couple times. The Browns, the Texans, and the Steelers all have that recipe. Keep the ball on the ground, take care of it, maybe take the ball away a little bit, and you're going to win. And I think they can win. Week 18, I think they beat Denver. I know it's this thing where the Broncos got to beat the Chiefs at some point. I don't think that's the case this year. I do really struggle to believe the Chiefs and the Niners will go 6-0 in their division, but especially the AFC West, I don't think it's this elite division anymore, at least from below the Chiefs. We talked about the Chargers and the Raiders yesterday, if you haven't checked that out. But Chiefs going 12-5, and when I look at the standings right now in the AFC, technically they're the 1 seed, but we haven't predicted half the teams yet in the AFC, especially the playoff teams. So They're one game up on the New York Jets. We're still going to have the Baltimore Ravens, the Houston Texans, a couple other AFC North teams that could be up there as well. So I think I'm not going to make my Super Bowl prediction just yet, but the Chiefs and the Niners are two teams that were in the Super Bowl last year. Would not surprise me if they were in the Super Bowl this year. But 12-5 on both ends, 6-0 in the division on both ends. Chiefs beat the Niners in, I believe, week 7. But two great teams, two teams that I'm very excited to watch this season. I appreciate you guys watching and listening. Again, if you're new, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like the video. We will have the rest of the AFC and NFC West teams coming tomorrow, which will be really fun. It'll be the, trying to think, Seahawks and Broncos in the same video, maybe, and then the Rams and the Cardinals. So it's going to be really fun. It'll be 2 separate videos tomorrow, double upload Wednesday. I appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate you guys listening. See you next time. God bless.